think that there's a false sense of security just for the mere existence of a front desk. The staff is not qualified to tell a fake ID from a real one. It's one thing to ask for an ID and you can upload a picture of your cat, but it's a whole other thing to actually go deep to the level of, is this a real ID or not? And is it the person who they say they are? And does it match all the other data points? And with all of the more sophisticated fraud and AI being such a big factor, there's an element of being kind of also proactive and understanding, okay, great, so we're using it for the better, but the bad actors and, bad players and those that are looking to exploit loopholes, how can they be using it?
Welcome to Alex Nanny, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we're here today with Ela Mezhiborsky, who is the co-founder and president at AutoHost. I think I did better before we hit play at saying your last name, but good to see you, Ela.
Ella, it's so good to have you here, and apologies from both of us. It's been a long time. We've been wanting to have you on. We tried to record a couple of years ago and something happened, and for whatever reason, it didn't work. So we're grateful that you gave us the time back. But could you tell us a little bit about you and AutoHost and kind of your journey to where you are today?
Yeah, it's true. We did try. It would have been a really different, I feel like, a breakdown back then. It was a good, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2021, I think we figured it out. Yeah, wild.
That's true. Yes, so my name is Ela Mezhiborsky. You did almost perfect, Alex. And I'm the president, co-founder of AutoHost. And then for those who don't know, AutoHost is a guest screening and verification platform. So we primarily focused on the world of short-term rentals and hospitality, and we pretty much handle everything in the guest journey when it comes to collecting information, verifying the guest, IDs, selfies, credit card payments. We have our background comes from cybersecurity, so we have a whole underlying part to the platform where we look at fraud cases and validating transactions online, all of that good stuff, and basically work with hospitality operators to mitigate that part of the risk and make the process seamless so that hospitality operators can really focus on hospitality.
Gotcha. Yeah, and gosh, how much has changed within the industry for almost 4 years ago, to this point. But when we had met you, you had actually just won a pretty major award. We were just coming out of the VRMA Fall Conference at San Antonio, and AutoHost had won the Focusrite Battleground as the Innovator of the Year, and against some pretty steep competition. That was exciting, but my gosh, like just thinking back to that time, how different is what AutoHost is now to what it was then, would you say?
It was also the first conference coming out of COVID. So
Yeah.
everybody was at a crazy kind of hype to see everyone, and that was a really fun when I met some of, amazing industry kind of players at that battleground competition. I almost feel like AutoHost is kind of the projection that we said we're going to be. So much has happened, especially on the kind of technical side, deeper into our integrations, getting embedded everywhere. I almost feel like at the time it was the early days of us really preaching the importance of guest screening, the concept of verifying who's walking through the door for your safety, for your guest safety. It feels like the narrative at the time was very much, well, screening is important, whereas now it's table stakes. Now we're kind of talking, of course you don't want a black box, and now we're talking AI is in the picture. We're getting deeper into what types of fraud can you be facing, or chargeback's a big deal. So we're on the same projection, but just feels like we're pretty much really advancing everything we said at the time we will be doing. So it's exciting times.
So you had mentioned something there that actually popped into my head when we were talking earlier about innovation with AI, and with the amount of, I guess, the deep fakes or the false, things that people can put out there. How are you going to navigate through that? Because I feel like that is potentially another layer of the security conversation that we need to be having that maybe we're not yet, but I'm sure you guys are.
Not only that we have been for a while now. And it's almost like I like to call it bad AI. I think we're so focused, and it's the hype. How can we use AI better? And we should be talking about it, and it's exciting. But there's an element of being kind of also proactive and understanding, okay, great, so we're using it for the better, but the bad actors and, bad players and those that are looking to exploit loopholes, how can they be using it? So first of all, I think that even back in the day when we're talking about looking at objective data points where you screen rather than relying on gut feeling or fingers crossed is my best strategy, kind of, well, I hope nothing happens, and you're using your judgment. But that opens the door not only to bias, discrimination, and we can go into the ethical side of screening, but it also gives loopholes to sophisticated fraud to very easily trick your staff that is really trained to give the best hospitality possible. So even from before, when we were talking objective data points, we were prepping for the fact that we can be blinded by a good cover story. And if before somebody sent in a message and it sounded sketchy, now with AI, nothing's going to sound sketchy. So everybody can have a really, really good cover story and an incredible looking ID photo that, to go along with it. And so first of all, we're at constant innovation and staying on top of any type of fraud trends, any ways that IDs can be exploited, any new advancements on how to match data points so that we take not only the photo of the ID, but we look at IP address, we look at whether people hide behind VPNs. There's so many attempts to mask your identity online, which really doesn't happen with your average innocent guest. I mean, Annie will not be using a fake credit card to book a stay just so that you don't pay out of pocket. Alex might.
You never know. I might get a little squirrely.
But so it's really that. I think it's the point that the more we rely on, that's where the passion is, the more that we're saying you can be objective. So gut feeling is lovely when you're running one or two properties and you're going to meet the person and greet them and shake their hand. But it changes a lot whether you're running a hotel, be it with the front desk or not, as times progress, or a short-term rental operation where you're usually not meeting the guest in person. And that's part of the beauty of it. And that's how we reach economies of scale. But you're leaving a really big gap of who walks through the door. So the more objective, the more tech we're using to kind of screen and scan everything to do with the reservation, the better prepared we are to also deal with the on the surface AI exploits.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting to see too. I mean, there's definitely a lot of different areas that have been more specific in what they're enforcing for STRs now. And one that comes to mind, of course, is Arizona, that you have to pass that you're not a sex offender to stay in a short-term rental, which I don't believe you have to do that to stay in a hotel. But how has your business changed with some of those more specifics, instances like that, or even just overseas? I know in a lot of the foreign countries in Europe, they have to submit a lot more information about the guests that they're getting actually to the police and local authorities. Have you guys ran into that, and do you help clients with that?
Yeah, so I mean, in the states and in various areas. So Arizona is now bringing it into regulation, but that's just the last couple of years that change has happened, right? So we have, when I'm talking about the various data points, that's been kind of on the list of verifications for a while now, where we are looking to get all the information about the guest. So for them to submit their ID, we check the list. You have travel sanctions, you have sex offender lists, you have no fly lists. During political events, we're looking through all of those no fly, no zone kind of things where you're not trying to let people putting your company at risk. So all of that gets scanned through the system. Now, if you upload somebody else's ID, it's a real ID, but it's not you. That's also where we're looking, to do whatever we can with your biometric scan and your selfie match. We'll look at your location. So all of these things to really avoid the people that shouldn't be staying in properties, including sex offenders, won't be staying there.
It's really interesting. So I go down the rabbit hole of spy shows on like Netflix and stuff, and we watched a lot of that stuff. And you were talking about like the biometrics and things of like world events. So do you guys look at situations? So I'm just thinking of like Taylor Swift traveling around the world, like events like that, where there are people that maybe like if there was somebody that was flagged as a stalker for Taylor Swift, could that be in your system so that you could know if that person showed up in a rental in a country where she was at? Like, is your system capable of doing that?
So I love the idea. I don't know that there would be a list.
Yeah.
If I Taylor Swift stalkers, there's public lists from every jurisdiction, and so
Okay.
when you do scan, I mean, in theory, it would be like any celebrity or stuff. So I wish
Yeah.
we could do something Taylor Swift specific, but in general, anybody that will be screened should not be allowed to book properties and
Yeah.
area
So it's
around it.
probably anything that the police have as public record you can access for a market and know if somebody books like it flags them. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So it doesn't have to be Taylor Swift. It could be anybody. Okay.
And by all means, it's funny though, with Taylor Swift in specific, the types of risk really ended up being moms taking their teenage daughters and getting too drunk.
Oh,
Um, those
Wow.
anecdotal stories. It's not so
yeah.
much the real crime and fraud was problematic during Taylor Swift,
Right.
but it was the more kind of gray area of rule compliance here and there. But it wasn't anything crazy, but some cities saw very crazy traction.
Yeah, I
Wow.
think Leo from, well, I can't remember the name of their company now, Superhog, formerly
Yeah.
Superhog, he talked about some things like that when there was the hen dos and, the bachelor parties, that there was some misbehavior and some crazy stories of, like, people's, stiletto heels being stuck in a stove or something, people just behaving very badly.
Well, and you never know. I love his point. He always says, somebody, you might be a great guest when you go away with your family, but now you're going on a girls' trip or a guy's trip, and you vacation differently depending on who you're with. But understanding who those guests are is certainly important. We all know
Sure.
that.
And them knowing that they're liable for their stay and they went through that type of
Yeah,
verification is also really valuable because they're just like something about the check mark of my ID is on file, my credit card is there, there's a security deposit.
right.
I signed agreements, I agreed to house rules and so on. It's valuable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, and we were just at the Track Next event in Nashville a couple weeks ago and got to spend some time with a couple of your teammates there, Roy and Cam, and they were telling us a little bit about kind of the new direction that you're going in a way of you're working with more companies on the supplier side too. So, I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you got going on there.
Yeah, that's a really, really exciting part of where we're headed. So we've, like we mentioned, we've been kind of in operation since 2019, going back, and so we really started by working with direct clients and operators, so SMBs, larger enterprise, and we're integrated through many of the PMSs in the space. But in recent years, we really saw the need of so many, be it guest experience or PMSs that are going with a direct type of a channel where other platforms that are parallel to us would want to be embedding things like AutoHost or other types of services. And it was interesting because for so long, I feel like I was in that equation of, do you go all in one solutions or dedicated build? There was so much to say about, AutoHost being a standalone platform, and our direct clients are enjoying everything to do with customizing their entire screening process, the way their team uses it, business rules, customizations, and so on. But there really was a business case made for a much more core product. And for that core product, we slowly saw that the systems that we're integrated with just want to offer it on their own. And we don't necessarily need to create a whole client profile and have customers become direct. So there's actually been a lot of really exciting work done on our tech side for both our API capabilities and a really impressive SDK, just developers toolkit for embeddability. And so we're working with a lot of operators now where tech vendors basically want to be offering AutoHost just as a module in their system. And so what we are extremely passionate about is the fact that we don't have to impose minimum unit requirements or look at size of clients, because really now it's a matter of, for the basic screening, making sure you're safe, have all the guests go through that verification, you dot your I's and cross your T's, that you have on file whatever you need and that you're safe letting go of the door code, of the check-in instructions, and so on. It's really exciting to see that come through, not just as integration, but just being the embedded solution on platforms. I mean, Enzo's been offering it for a while, Journey, Hospitable, like a handful of other players, and we're growing and getting into more of the PMS and guest experience apps. So that's really, really exciting that we want to be able to show kind of small, medium players that, whichever platform you're using, you can just go ahead and enable AutoHost. And I see a very near future where for guest verifications, it's going to be the basic bare minimum requirement. So you can opt out of it, but the default should be that every guest should really be submitting their ID, agreeing to the rules. You make sure that they are who they say they are. And so I'm excited for that next phase.
Yes, I imagine that gives you scalability on a level that you wouldn't have if you were trying to do all these custom integrations. And so I know that NextPax is something that we've talked about, is like having that marketplace mentality, because I think for vendors in this space, where we struggle is to being able to get to all of those independent operators or people who have like bespoke systems. And so if you are part of something that you don't have to have, you don't have to impose these minimums, you don't have to impose these basic requirements, you are able to get out to the masses a lot quicker. And I imagine for you that's been great. So out of curiosity, I can't remember when we first met you, like how many partners you had in your platform, but where are you at right now in terms of users?
So kept growing. We're pretty much integrated with all the major PMSs out there. I believe we process about, I want to say 50,000 reservations a month
Okay.
right
Wow.
now, which is a really impressive graph.
That's a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the mission from the get-go was really to offer that protection layer to the industry, so
Yeah.
that pretty much, I wouldn't even say shift, but an enhancement and strategy to go more to the tech vendors is really just the next step in, putting our money where our mouth is and making it available. So the growth has been really impressive, and the integrations are really a part of it. So I mean, and you touched on just tech, so the tech stack argument, we have, the best technology out there, and we pride ourselves in the quality of integrations, but at the end of the day, the operator that isn't very tech savvy or doesn't want to navigate all of those integrations, we really do see so much value in them just having the core, the brain of AutoHost without the bells and whistles. And if you need the no frill solution and just like, I need them verified and good to go, it made a lot of sense to start getting embedded more and more and being the kind of the solution of choice on
Yeah.
platforms out there.
No, I love that, and I think, Annie and I are definitely firm believers in collaboration over competition, and it makes sense, for you to be able to grow and scale to do that through all these relationships and, the companies that you kind of work side by side with for many years here. So I think that's really cool and a great way to do it.
Investing in the tech, which is really, really exciting. I know, so you guys know Roy very well, and he's my co-founder, he's the CEO and CTO of AutoHost, but Roy comes from the cybersecurity space. So for us to look at, the bare minimum, I'm equating it to like beware of dog versus actually having a dog. It's one thing to ask for an ID and you can upload a picture of your cat, but it's a whole other thing to actually go deep to the level of, is this a real ID or not? And is it the person who they say they are? And like, does it match all the other data points? And with all of the more sophisticated fraud and AI being such a big factor, we get to keep investing in the tech itself rather than try to expand horizontally and, compete on the guest experience side, because there's so many beautiful apps out there. I love our guest portal, but is it the prettiest one? I mean, it's great. You can use another one too. And we really, really care for the screening part to be effective across all of those platforms so that any operator, whatever it is they use, is kind of protected by AutoHost, which would make us really proud.
Yeah. What's the next leveling up of AutoHost? Because, you're helping everybody screen their guests. And I think, again, going back to the earlier, the AI component is going to throw a lot of like balls in the air. Like you're going to have to, really be cautious of that. But what do you think that AutoHost can be doing, or I guess in the future? Are you looking to expand into other, I mean, you're doing vacation rentals and I guess hotels as well, you mentioned. Are there other scenarios where you see this technology being deployed?
Yeah, so the big picture one day potentially could be to kind of expand beyond hospitality. There's a handful of industries that are really adjacent to us. So you have the long-term market. Now we're dipping our feet there because we have so many operators that play in the whole short-term slash long-term space. So they're doing their long-term screening. So you have long-term tenants. You have anything from car rentals and cruises and airline and so on. So just so many transactions are moving online that in our bigger picture vision, we're not specifying hospitality. We're just looking at validating those transactions. So if we can have any exchange between two people be trusted online, that would be a huge win with where we're going. I just feel like hospitality is such a unique starting point for us because you're not just exchanging, you're not just buying a shirt. And it's not just did the payment go through or not. You're giving keys to a property and something happens behind closed doors and you're liable for it, be it from your ethical, moral, or legal responsibility. You care about your pocket for sure. A chargeback sucks, but there's also so much more in kind of hospitality, keeping its name. And it's such a beautiful industry that, I mean, yes, we will be expanding, but I think that at first, in terms of, if we can make sure that any reservation in hospitality is properly screened, just like maybe, you used to be able to drive without a seatbelt or fly without a passport, but that's long gone and not the responsible way of doing things. It's really where I see hospitality going.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answer, too. We'll be back in just a minute, but first, a message from our premier brand sponsor, Beyond.
Hi, I'm Nathan Bullock, founder, CEO of Deserving Vacations, and we started using Beyond in 2022. We use Beyond for pricing, obviously. Then we use it to track pacing, ADR, how we're comparing to the local market. We see year over year, and we really track demand from that standpoint, which is very easy to do in their dashboard. The search-powered pricing tool is one of our favorites. They are pulling data from travelers to our site. The demand they track will increase or decrease pricing based on that demand. And we have seen, in some cases, our pricing go as high as 40% compared to what we may have been charging or what we have achieved. It's about as hands-off as you can get, and it's been a game changer for us. It really keeps us on task. It's a great pricing tool that seems to have its finger on the pulse at all times. It has made our life easier because I know the team at Beyond is working day in and day out. Everybody at the staff, whether that's our touch point or anyone else we've interacted with over there, has been great. Hand-holding along the way with the great team over there has been tremendous. I think the new products they're bringing to market, whether that's Tally or Signal, have all been great, and it shows that they're not trying to just be, a standalone pricing tool, but they're growing on their brand. Since implementing Beyond in 2022, we have seen year-over-year growth in top-line revenue for 4 straight years, sometimes 27% year-over-year, 30% year-over-year, and that's really a testament to the tool and everything it can provide. ADR, occupancy rates have all climbed as well, so we're super happy with it. We have found that Beyond pricing has been the best in the industry.
Ready to maximize your vacation rental revenue with smarter pricing? Beyond makes it easy with cutting-edge dynamic pricing and revenue management tools. Get started today with a $50 credit and free onboarding when you sign up at beyondpricing.info/Alex and Annie. Take control of your pricing strategy with Beyond today. I'm curious for your thoughts on, it was probably right around 2021, I think, when we were probably at that conference. And Simon Lehman said to Annie and I, take a good look around, because a lot of the suppliers that are here in this vendor hall, they won't be here next year or the next year, that there's just going to be a lot. There was so much overlap in product, and just, people that came up with something during COVID and then, realized, well, the software already offers that. But what is kind of your take on consolidation within the type of tech that you do or that you guys offer in the industry? Like, where do you see that going? Is there going to be more consolidation, or is it going to be continued development of just all these different products and people have to figure out which one they want?
It's a good question. And I remember that I spoke to Simon too, and it was like, there was like that hype.
Yeah.
I think that we saw some companies kind of, names wind down and disappear. So that's kind of happening already. In terms of consolidation, I think that at least in our perspective, we've worked so hard to be able to find the strengths and weaknesses of every company. So, even in the world of screening, it's one thing to collect ID so that you have it on file and you've done your check mark. But it's another thing to kind of go deep into preventative measures. And, you don't want to be in the news with a sex trafficking scandal, and you don't want to be
Right
into those things for prevention. So I think that our approach to really empower the screening side and be able to offer that. SDK is just a way for any operator to embed the screening in their tool. I think that there is some consolidation. You can see pretty much you don't have to choose one or the other. So in some cases, we can be joining forces and pretty much giving the best solution out there. And if, some companies offer the preemptive and some companies are more focused on your plan B or your insurance side of things, or, keeping kind of a well-rounded picture of all of it, I would love to see more consolidation in terms of area of expertise wise. We are working with a lot of vendors out there to pretty much be that provider of the screening side so that everything else can run smoothly, including going, into the different PMSs and guest experience apps.
Yeah. So on the hotel side of things, I was just thinking, because the hotel side to me has, I don't want to say they've lacked this, but it feels like the vacation rental part of the industry is definitely honed in on the need for having this security in place. And you almost take it for granted that you go to a hotel and you're just as safe.
Yeah.
And
So true.
and Alex and I were just in Nashville, and there was a situation where I had gotten off an elevator and somebody followed me to like down the hall, and thankfully somebody else on the elevator sensed that this person might not be on the up and up, and so they took me to my room to make sure that I got in my room, and then this person left. So in thinking about that later, it was like, okay, this person somehow convinced everybody in the elevator that he didn't need to put his key to get on. They were like just very trusting of it. And so we put ourselves in harm's way in a hotel where we might not do it in a vacation rental. So how have you seen the adoption of hotels in your tech to say like, yeah, we definitely need to put that in place? Or do you think that maybe they're not adopting it because by doing that, it admits that they have some security flaws?
It's a really good question. I think it's moving in the right direction, but I wish it was for the reasons that you're saying. So I think that there's a false sense of security just for the mere existence of a front desk. Now, a front desk, the staff is not qualified to tell a fake ID from a real one, or nobody's stopping people at the elevator. So this example you're providing is really serious, and it's interesting to see that, yeah, when you're sharing a house, it's just you and your family on Airbnb or booking.com or Expedia or whatever it is you're booking, but when you're going to a hotel, you're exposed to so many people. What we do see with front desk is that they are doing the shift, but not for the ethical or moral reasons, but because they're moving away from front desks. So better screening is being introduced, sometimes not even intentionally. Sometimes they just want to avoid the person at the front desk looking at IDs. So they're bringing in the automated solution. So I feel like automation and scale is their top priority, and it's a money game. I like that the result is that people get vetted better, and I think there's still a long way to go. I feel like short-term rentals kind of had to do that. We're being exploited, so it's nice to drive that change. The hotels are going there. You mentioned things like, sex offender stuff. Hotels are a big problem there, and slowly across the states. I don't know if the world is catching up as fast. I know in Europe, not so much. I was talking to Deborah Labby, and she was saying it's a big problem, and America's leading the charge. But even in the U.S., so many states are bringing in mandatory courses and awareness, just because there's been cases of just front desk personnel pretty much letting in what is clearly sex trafficking, but they didn't either know how to call it, choose to call it. So that awareness thing is being raised, probably because the problem became so big.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, I was at a conference and I want to say it might have been at Verma in maybe San Antonio. It was a conference anyway, and they were talking about in Florida. There was a mandate by the governor several years ago that hotel workers had to go through training when they started front desk. Like they had to be able to recognize the signs of sex trafficking. So the people at this conference were talking about like how do we introduce this to the vacation rentals? And so it was interesting because it's like that was a training module, not an actual service. Like what you're providing is more of a deeper service to be able to cut it off before it becomes an issue instead of just recognizing when it's already under your nose. And I think that that's kind of like, you catch it before it becomes a problem. But like in Florida, that's just a huge problem. And I think like I live in the part of the state where I've read articles about the amount of trafficking that goes from like Orlando over to Texas where they're bringing, where people are coming in illegally from the southern border. Like there's that trafficking that's going through this part of the state. And like they're stopping at these roadside motels and these people just are not aware and paying attention because again, front desk is in one part of the building and the where they're checking it or where they're arriving in the room is a completely different part of it. So they don't have any way to really stop this. So I think, you kind of can bridge that gap. And I do hope that hotels that are listening to this, because I know we have some hotel people that do listen to our podcast, will recognize that there's value in it and it's safety for everybody. And I think at the end of the day, if everybody had these in place, it would just make us more aware of what's happening and try to really stop some of this bad behavior has become so prevalent.
Yeah. And it's not either or. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you need your first line of defense. You need to work kind of to be proactive and do things before the stay. A lot can be eliminated and mitigated by demanding that a reservation isn't a black box, especially in the criminal activity. So, I mean, innocent damages or intentional damages, they suck, and you can protect with that both with initial security deposits, vetting your guests, agreeing to rules, damage control, insurances afterwards. All of that should be in place. But it's really that mix of act proactively, know who's walking through the door so that they don't think like it's a free for all in a black box for whatever type of activity there. I think training of staff for short-term rentals as well, even when you're communicating, there's ways to, door locks, noise sensors. A noise sensor sounds very different when it's a party starting or when there's escort services happening in the room.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
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 that you're getting. And
Yeah.
it's important to flag those and be aware of it, and for the team not to just dismiss it. Well, if the payment went through, we're good. No, you're not good.
It's interesting because I think it goes to some of the conversations that a lot of people I had yesterday actually with somebody about, we're in hospitality and this sense that everything can be done with no touch and like you said, a black box and just everything just be so technology based that you don't think about the human factor of it all. You need to have both pieces of it. And there is just that. I mean, it's like how do we not protect our staff? How do we protect our investment? But how do we protect our guests? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like we want to protect all the people, and you have to think the human component is far more valuable than the monetary component of it all. And so
Right.
this kind of answers all of those questions, I think.
Yeah.
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 I mean, even cleaning staff should be, I mean, they're right there.
Yeah.
Even, no matter how not hands-on of an operation you're running, somebody walks into that unit, somebody sees you know, the, the usage of facilities and how the place is looking, and seeing the guests. So there's ways to be on the lookout, to get the training that's necessary to make sure that, our industry isn't getting exploited. Because, I mean, trafficking is a really difficult topic, and I'm extremely passionate about it. And I think that we should own up to our responsibility. We by no means encourage it, but we enable it without meaning to. It's a place to do something. And then short-term rentals is unfortunately that much, I wouldn't even say easier. It's a really big problem with hotels, but short-term rentals with an operator or staff that isn't trained is that much easier to exploit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a good point that you make. Just because there's a front desk doesn't mean that it's any more safe. Those people don't know what they're looking at when they're looking at an ID. I mean, on one hand, I'll say the two sides of this story. But if I'm at a hotel and I order the DoorDash or something, I always ask them to bring it to my room because I don't want to have to walk down in the lobby past the front desk. But at the same time, I understand why the hotels that don't allow that don't, right? You have to have a room key, but it's like there's no like consistency across the board as to whether people can just get up into rooms at hotels or if like you actually have to be a guest and have a key. But I feel like, our industry has taken such huge strides as far as, trying to eliminate a lot of these risks because we had to in a lot of cases from regulations and other things. But do you ever foresee auto host or technology like you guys getting into hotels? I mean, could hotels ever have something just at the front desk like what you have, that it is actually putting it through a scanner before somebody checks in?
100%, and that's already active. So
Oh,
um,
okay.
it's not a big part of our model, but there's a handful of operators that they pretty much touch on that hotel experience. Even the mid houses. There's a handful of hotel chains in Prague that we were working with. So they have pretty much like a kiosks at the front desk with the AutoHost module. So there's things that get enabled on that front. So if they didn't do the verification in advance, they can do it at the door. There was one in Chicago. So hotels are doing it. And the line is getting very, very blurry. I mean, Airbnb, short-term rentals is no longer Ella renting out her second bedroom. The hybrid models are doing it faster. And then we're seeing traditional hotels absolutely catching up.
Interesting.
Very cool. Well, Ella,
Mm.
one of the things we like to ask all the people that come on the show, and you now that we've known you for a couple of years, you know a lot of people that we know, and you're engaged in a lot of things going on. But do you think that there's something in the industry right now that maybe we're not talking enough about? I mean, obviously, I think that I just listened to an interview that you did about the human trafficking and stuff, and that is so important. And I do think that we've been neglecting talking about that. But are there other things that you think that we're missing the mark on?
Trafficking is a big one I'm passionate about. And I think that we're doing a great job increasing that awareness. The other one would really be the bad AI conversation. So you don't know what you don't know. And I would love to bring up more awareness and kind of the spotlight into how you can get exploited. So I think that, and this isn't like an immediate, this month thing, but in the coming little while, we're doing whatever we can on the tech side. But even just like education, kind of saying, hey, before, I mean, jump on the bandwagon, like do whatever you can. Let's bring AI into everything, but also let's increase that education and awareness on what our guests are doing with AI. There's talk about, booking kind of optimization and algorithms and how you can optimize your listings, but on the safety side, and we're going to keep preaching that word of caution. I would say that as we get excited about what everything that AI can do, just really important to also keep in mind what can be done with AI to exploit us, how our team needs to be trained, and what tech tools we could be using. So you mentioned, the human touch. That's always going to stay there. That's the beautiful part of hospitality. I mean, I don't think we just want, hotels that are boxes. You need the people element, but decide where. So there's areas where tech and kind of the more objective way of looking at things would be a lot more valuable, and then focus the human efforts on other things. So combating AI combating bad AI, that is, will not gut feeling and kind of human judgment. So we need to be better prepared for it.
Yeah. Oh, great answer.
Yeah, great
Um,
topic.
So here's another one from the vault. So this was we actually we remembered on our 200th episode that we used to also ask everybody back in the day. We probably asked you this a few years ago when we tried to interview you, but we used to ask our guests, and I think we should ask it more of what is what you do, through AutoHost and in your career. What does that say about Ella and your just you as an individual?
Oh, so many things. I mentioned to you guys that I just came back from a trip to the Azores Islands in Portugal. And just, I've always been passionate about travel. Like, of all the industries on earth, this is the one where your discretionary income goes towards that. I mean, business travel is great, and a lot of companies are making money off that as well. But just in general, the world of travel, it's such a fun space that we get to be in. So, what it says about me, I mean, I'm doing whatever I can to stay in it. So yes, I'm on the side that is on the safety and protection and risk, but that's just because, I mean, part of my friend, shit hit the fan when I was running operations, and we had to develop this, right? We used all the tools out there, but then when we saw that gap, that's how AutoHost came about. And I used to run a property management company. We spoke about it too. So it's almost like I like being in that industry. I like being the guest. I like being the host. I like working in the tech that empowers this industry. So the better we can kind of keep it safe and beautiful and avoid the bad apples, I think would be something that I'd be proud to do a big check mark with my life.
Yeah,
I
well, you
love that.
certainly are. So
Yeah.
I think you're doing that for sure. But Ella, so good to finally catch up with you again, and we were just so excited to get to see Roy and Cam last week, and that's kind of how we all got back together here. So thank you for coming on. And when will we see you? Are you going to any of the shows coming up this
I'm
year?
gonna, I'm gonna do my best to. There's a few April ones. We're still kind of finalizing thing, but I'd love to see people in person, and so
Yeah.
Awesome,
hoping to
great,
do some more
wonderful.
interactions. Thank you guys
Yeah.
for having me. It was way overdue, but I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
good to see you.
absolutely. If anybody wants to reach out, Ella, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So LinkedIn, probably. I am happy to connect. I love, be it AutoHost specific or anything I can get involved with. So always just, reach out, and I like to talk to people in the space.
Awesome. Great. If anybody wants to get in touch with Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And until next time, thanks everybody.